recent survey by The Economist surveyed 100 business leaders and asked them how long they thought this pandemic and the lockdown and all of the restrictions will last. And over 70% in this region said it'll be over by Christmas. Now, the science tells us that that isn't the case at all, that the actual threat won't be over until we've got a vaccine, until we've been vaccinated and all that. And that could be 18 months, 2 years down the line, scientifically. A lot of countries now are adopting herd immunity, where it's okay, lockdown's not working, let's just get out there. If you catch it, you catch it. It's up to you. I think personally that's a little irresponsible, but that's only my opinion. The bottom line is, how do you see the next 2 years? Do you see that we're going to continue with lockdown, or the governments are going to try to continue with lockdown, or are we just going to say, okay, let's just get on with it?
I think it's going to vary. So you've seen the countries that have done very well and have effectively eradicated it. Hong Kong, Taiwan, New Zealand, Vietnam. They acted early. They did a number of things quickly. The population conformed because they wanted the minimum amount of pain.
Yeah.
And now they're getting back to normal. They're running normal lives. You see people bungee jumping again in New Zealand, going to restaurants in Hong Kong, going to meetings in the cinema in Taiwan. You know, they've got on with it. And so they're looking at the rest of the world with a level of curiosity, saying, well, hang on, we got this first.
Yeah.
You know, what is it about us that you didn't think you could learn from us? There are other places where we've acted much slower. And I think even if they're not explicitly arguing for herd immunity, that's what they're going for. And there's this sense that as much as these things are painful, we're going to have to keep going with the economy, because otherwise the consequences could be dire, and we have to try and deal with the pandemic in whatever track we can, whether that's through antigen testing to see if people have got it, antibody testing to see if they've had it, or at some point a vaccine, or hopefully some cures as well. And we don't know if any of this stuff is 100%, perfect. It's unlikely, because the vaccine is being tested on one form of the virus at the moment, and we know that there are at least 14 mutations.
Oh, I think it's 72 the other day.
Well, there you go. So you're hearing different numbers. This is something that will be a moving picture. There's a very good chance that we may never eradicate it in the way that we haven't actually eradicated SARS or HIV or all these viruses. But we have to learn to adapt. And I understand when countries make that choice to just go both paths. Obviously, the virus tends to hit certain groups. The elderly, certain ethnic communities seem to be more favored. And I think that's more because of the prevalence of certain diseases or the living conditions for certain groups. But the poor, people with pre-existing conditions, if you've got diabetes, all those things, you seem to be much more likely to get it. So, there's just an acceptance that, a tacit acceptance that you might see higher mortality rates in those groups. And just an acceptance that if you want to keep your economy going, we have to do this. I don't think the citizenry is going to like it. I think all of us find it, unpalatable. But we also understand that in a world where we really are focused on the economy, on money, on GDP, then you have to keep that engine going. And a lot of countries are going to go bankrupt for this. It's fairly certain that this is, if you like, the end of the independence of certain countries. We could see, within 2 years, certain countries effectively being adopted by other countries and by bailout funds. And then the new model being a much closer supervision.
Yeah.
So that, Sweden might partner with, let's pick a country, Yemen, and be the one that's helping Yemen build its capacity back up, build its infrastructure, really monitoring it closely to get onto a stronger footing.
Yes, I see a slightly different scenario. And again, it's only my opinion. The world as we know it at the moment, I believe, is bankrupt. you can't spend the amount of money or allocate the amount of money that they are at the moment to overcome this issue. Trillions and trillions across the world. It's got to come from somewhere, and it can't come out of the public purse. So I think what's going to happen is that when this is over and the debt is counted, there's going to have to be a correction, like there was at the end of the financial crisis. And I think that a huge amount of money is going to be written off. I can't see personally that countries will be adopting other countries. I think there will be philanthropy, of course, and there'll be humanitarian requirements. But I'm not so sure that that's going to go to a level that will be long term. And I think we're just going to correct, write everything off, and then really go back to square one again.
I don't think there's one scenario, and that's something we explore in the book. We explore four different scenarios, but I outlined one. I think whatever happens, if there is support to weak and failing nations, it's not going to happen in the way it's happened in the past, where money was given, there was a level of supervision and monitoring, but not that much. I think this time around, people are going to say, no, we want to monitor that much more closely. Yeah. We want to monitor how you use it. We want to make sure it goes into building health infrastructure, physical infrastructure, training, new industry. So the adoption is more as a kind of coach, mentor, guide relationship.
Sure.
And a much closer kind of responsibility for getting you to the future.